Hey, I'm working on a street scene, a cityscape, again with a couple of figures in it, kind of to follow up the single figure cityscape that I did about a couple months ago that I re-edited and just posted. So I thought I would do another one. I like doing the city scenes. I need more practice doing them. I like them also because there's a lot of textures and glazing techniques that I can do on these types of subject matters, and it gives me a chance to practice adding those figures, those really loose and expressive figures, into a overall scene, an overall watercolor that I think adds a lot of life and kind of a story to the overall piece. So let's get started. All right, here is the reference that I'm working from. I did a little Pinterest trip and found some subject matter, an old world alley, a couple of figures sitting in the chairs on the steps, and I thought it looked like fun. Give me a chance to kind of work with my silhouettes and my wet on wet color interactions on the figure, along with all the glazing and the textures that I can do on the scene itself. So also kind of a lot of perspective. Got a 1-point perspective going on in this, and yeah, lots of value ranges as well to make it look like we're looking from a dark alley into a more lit open courtyard area. So that's what we're going to work with on this, and I have sketched it up already. I've got the original is a vertical, and I've translated it more into a horizontal, just mainly so it fits this format a little better, so you can see more of the piece. So the step one is essentially the color blocking and just knocking down all the highlights. There's really only a cut spots right in here on the sunny courtyard looking through this dark alleyway. When I lay in my first color wash, my color blocking, I'm going to try to protect those areas where the hot highlights are. So let's get started. This one right here, this one. All right, so I'm going to start with my flat brushes. I'm sorry, I'm a flat brush guy, so I just like those nice flat brushes. I'm working with about an inch. Yeah, that's an inch flat brush right here. I could also, actually, I have a 2-inch flat watercolor wash brush that it might actually be a better choice to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and get in here. The overall color scheme in this is fairly warm, so it's a lot of ochres or siennas and umbers that we're going to be working with. So I'm just going to kind of mix up an initial puddle of some yellow ochre and maybe a little bit of, oh, that's some of that really hot yellowish ochre. All right, so nice bold colors. There's some raw sienna, nice big puddle. So this is all going to be wet on wet, and we'll try to get a kind of a range of colors kind of working here as we go. As you can see, my sketch isn't identical. I just used the photograph as a rough reference and give me a sense of what I want to do. Have kind of the focal point off-centered in this, so that door could be an opportunity to do something. Even though it's a brownish color in the photograph, I might throw it into a color. It might be an interesting thing to do. So I'm going to look here. I've got a lighter area running right through here. We got to protect those highlights here. A couple little hot spots in here that you need to watch, and even on the surface of this front plane of that building. So I'm just going to kind of come in and get started dropping in some colors, and that's pretty saturated. I'm going to keep in mind all of this dries a lot lighter than when you first drop it in. So just going to kind of bounce around and drop it in. If I miss a spot, or if I overwork a spot where there should be some lightness, I can come in and pick it out. So I'm just going to go ahead and just throw caution to the wind, except for right down in here. I kind of create a nice sharp edge right in here. All right, and then right down along in here. There we go. And we'll get a little umber in there. Okay. And we'll just get a little more saturation in this shadow area. Loosen it up, block it out, allow that color to flow and move. We're just kind of knocking down all the whites except for a few spots where we really want it. I'm going to go ahead and pop some color into that door. The frame has some highlights on it, so I'm just going to bounce around a little bit. There we go. And like I said, I got a little coolness right in through this area. I'm going to knock it down, get a little kind of a gray color going right in here. There's some umbers, some siennas happening. Let's get some of that on this underneath side. All right, so right up under here, we'll just throw some of that umber. I see a highlight I need to go back and rescue. There's some that color's down in here. Trying to make some directional marks for the perspective, at least to reinforce that perspective a little bit. Okay. All right, and then we'll grab thinner brush. A nice sharp edge right there. I'm going to rescue this highlight right here. I'm just going to pick it back out. There we go. It'll probably soften up again, but that's okay. So really at this point, we're starting to get an idea of some of the saturated colors. We're just letting stuff mix and meld together. I'm going to unload my brush. Come right in here. I'm just going to loosen and lighten up some of that right there. And right along this edge as well. Cool. Maybe right up here as well. All right. So I'm just kind of daubing around just to get some textures in it. Got a couple highlights I need to pick out on the ground. It's very wet right here. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to lighten some of these. It's really going to work better in the darker areas. So we'll just kind of scrub out a little bit. I'll probably have to rescue those with some Pro white on the back end. So a little bit down here. There we go. So, all right, that's color blocking. So we're going to let that dry and we'll come in with our next pass and start establishing some better shapes and a little more structure to the saturation with, creating the shapes with the saturation and blocking out some more specificity in the overall piece. So let it dry. All right, the paper is dried. I don't feel any, it's a little damp. I feel a little bit of moisture in it still, but it's dry enough that we can come in and start doing our more dense and saturated colors and starting to find some of the shapes and add a little structure to the piece before we get into stage 3 where we're going to sit and really add in all the details and the textures and all the fussy stuff that really pulls the piece together. So let's get started on this. All right, so what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to bounce around. I'm going to find all the shadows in in the overhangs, these awnings, and then the doorways, the windows, all of that stuff. I'm just going to really come in and block in that, really with some dense umbers. Throw a little either phthalo or some ultramarine into it, so we get a really nice dark rich color. Get a fairly good sized puddle right here. All right, so I'm working with a 1/2 inch flat brush right now, so I should be able to get some good edges and really kind of find that structure in this piece. So, and I'm going to try to keep it fairly quick and fast and not get tied up with a lot of the right perfect little edges and lines and stuff. So I'm just going to come in and we'll just get started and block in some of those things, make irregular and kind of interesting marks, and we'll deal with all the fun stuff on the back side of it. Maybe even feather it a little bit, throw some of that. We're going to start getting some of that texture into it as well, because we're in a shadow side here. So just nice and loose. All right, and we even have kind of a, we'll get down into the ground as well, but let me get some of this going here. Get some of this crunchiness right up there. There we go. There we go. Little dry brush action. Come in underneath here. Actually going to throw a little bit of, a little more of a orange. Get a mix of it right here. Throw it on the front end of this awning right there. Cool. Go ahead and pull that down right in here. Okay, I'm working a little bit, reinforcing that 1-point perspective right there. I'll soften that up just a little bit right there. All right, so that side's looking pretty good. I'm going to focus a little more on the door later on. I want to come over, I'm going to mix up a little more of that color. Get a little thicker saturation on it. Nice dense colors. I'm going to come over here again. I'm going to get started right up here. Actually, come in right on that side there, top portion of this awning. There we go. Good. And I can pick out, if I lose any of the highlights, I can come back in, I can pick them out. Or I can add them back in on the back side. I'm going to keep that edge right there a little crunchy. Okay. These are just shapes. I'll turn them into something in a little while. Come over here, we'll throw some of this in. I'm going to get a nice edge right up here. Okay. It's fairly, you know, there's not a lot of colors here so far. And again, I'm just trying to block out and catch all the various shapes, introducing some textures into it. I see a bluish, more of a bluish color happening up here. I'm just going to throw it like that. Cool. All right, so we're really starting to build some of the shapes. Get some of that stuff to flow and function nicely. It's still very damp. I'm going to go ahead, come back over here. I'm going to just throw a little more color onto that right there. Right in here. Get a little more of a neutral right here. Now this needs to be even darker. So, but I'm going to go ahead and pull a little bit of crunchiness right there. Cool. And then I'm going to add a little more of that density out here to the walkway or the... All right, so... Okay. All right, so we're starting to get some interesting looks to it. I'm going to throw a little hotter color. Get a little more of that yellow ochre. Throw a little more of that right up in here. Get a little more of that orange. Throw it back here maybe. This is just textures. We'll throw a little more of that blue. We'll get a little more of the, got a little cerulean there. Cool. Now I'm going to just throw a bit of that right in there. That'll be nice. And maybe just a smidge of it right up here. Soften it up. Up, that needs to be the orange. All right, so it's very loose, not a lot of definition, but we're starting to see shapes. So I said I might color the door. I don't know. I might keep it true to the photo. I'm just going to block in just some of the values in it with this brownish color just to get some density to it. And if I need to, I can always glaze a little bit. I'm, ignoring my figures at the moment. Again, they'll come in at the back end of the piece when it's a make or break situation, right? So, all right, cool. Make it a little more density in this area right here so that white will really pop. There we go. All right, so I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes and then we'll come in and we'll start adding more of the structure and try to get the pieces have a little more contrast, and we'll see where it goes. All right, so now I'm going to come in. I'm going to just start adding some of the structure and the detail in the windows and essentially painting the shadows in a lot of these areas and just finding some edges. Now, I may not keep all the edges I paint. They might just give me an idea of where I can then start softening and and losing the edges. So there's going to be a lot more intensity in here. Might even add some more glazing, especially on the ground. So it's a lot of opportunities for a range of various techniques. Wet on wet, wet on dry, dry brush, yeah, all that stuff can come into play at this stage. So, and I may be bouncing around between stage 2 and stage 3 with bringing this piece up and starting to function as a overall whole. So let's see what I can do. So I'm going to get some good dense colors. Again, the burnt umber and ultramarine, or some sort of a blue or a phthalo blue if you want a little greener feel to it using phthalo. So nice thick thing that I can really start drawing with some line to find the structure. So back here in the distance, foreground, we're in a dark shadow up in this area, so I need to really kind of bring the saturation up in this area. So we'll see what we can do. All right, paper's fairly dry. I got a couple of damp spots. I can still feel some moisture. It's dry enough. I'm not lifting any of the pigment off by touching it. So I got a good puddle of colors on my palette that I can bounce around and find the various things I need. And I'm just going to come in and start just adding some of the structure where it needs to be. The darkest darks on this piece, and it's fairly thin. It's going to be fairly light. It'll dry lighter. And just coming back in and finding it all. And it's really just touching, creating a sense of pattern, painting suggested detail without painting detail. And just coming back in and finding it all. Alright, so that's looking pretty cool. I need a good color like that. I'm going to come right along this pipe, grab some of the color right there. It's very damp over here. That's why I'm starting in the center here. This is a lot drier. Either side is still pretty, I can still feel too much moisture, so I'm just going to avoid it for the moment. Come in here and we'll just work on this center portion. The painting architecture is fun once you get the hang of it. Once you realize you don't have to be a, you know, you're not a mechanical engineer trying to design something precisely. If you can start injecting your style and technique into it, you learn how to manipulate other people's eyes with the things that you're doing. So, and this is just texture work right now. There's a lot of textures on that stucco. There's some really dark darks right in here. Underneath side. Broken lines, shapes, sharp versus fuzzy. Soften that out a little bit. Yeah, there we go. I'm come down and I'll work on this doorway a little bit. Intensify some of those shadows. Okay. Yeah, now we're cooking. All right, I'm going to get a little more of that orange color. Throw a little more of that right in here. Just creating pattern there. Okay. All right, cool. All right, it's starting to come together. Let's keep working it. Cool. Yeah, it's starting to work. that's all feeling better. How long have we been going? 21 minutes. Alright, so spending a lot of time on that. This is actually the focal point right in here. That and these two figures. Cool. Alright. I'm going to throw a little more of this color right up in here. Alright. Alright. A little darker right in here. Alright, so we're going to pick back up. It's dried just a little bit. And I want to get a little more of a cool feel in the shadows here. So I'm going to do a big glaze just to lay in some colors in here just to cool it off, at least on the upper side of this shadow over here. Still a little damp, but, and it's a very thin glaze. And I want it down here as well. So I'm going to come off of this step. I'm going to throw it in over here on the ground. Let's cool that down. Backside over here. And right up in here. And soften up some of those strokes. Cool. All right. Need a little more of that right down here as well. All right, that needs to dry again, and as soon as that's dry, I'm going to start getting a little more structure in here, get some more of the textures, and saturate some more of the colors, and we'll just keep bringing it up. All right, so I'm going to continue working with this. It's dried again, so we should be ready to go, and I'm going to start dropping in some more structure and line work, a little more drawing with some dark, dense colors, and get that structure built back up before I do any more glazing. So let's get going. So we are deep into phase 3, stage 3 of this piece. The part that takes the longest, it's all the fussy details, adding the saturation, structure, contrast, textures, everything that makes this piece start looking like it's supposed to be. So I'll just bounce around throughout the whole piece, and while I'm doing that, I'll drop in some soothing guitar music again. So enjoy all the fussiness that entails right here. I'm working with a pretty small brush, either a number 3, 2 or 3, sometimes a 1. And apparently I was very intent on this portion of it because I kept getting my head in frame. But yeah, I'm going through right now, just saturating some more colors. Okay. Again, this is the fun part with architecture, and that it's just irregular shapes. It doesn't have to be anything. Oh, I'm starting to work on the figure right now. So he's sitting there against the door. Everything's very dark. It's just a black silhouette. So if I can get the pose of the figure just right, the seated figure, everything should read properly. So I'm dropping into blacks first. This guy's going to have a red shirt, so paint a little shadows against the wall. There it is, adding in that red, and the color is just going to blend together. A little more of the dark color in. Yep, there's my big old fat head again. My ball cap. That annoying ass ball cap. Touching a little bit of a highlight on the knee there, picking a little bit of the red to give it a lighter tone. Alright, so enjoy. I'm just going to bounce around and keep working on this until everything's all wrapped up and buttoned down, and we will declare it done. So have fun. And I mentioned earlier that I didn't get this done in one sitting, so this piece took a little over 2 hours to paint, and I'm editing it so it's about an hour long tutorial and video to watch. So I do find the longer tutorials, when I'm doing a piece that I want to look good as a workflow video, something I can speed up and kind of give you a voiceover on, these are pretty challenging, in that by the time I get the whole thing done and the video shot, I am toast by the end of it. That's one thing I've noticed about working with these longer videos and tutorials. So again, I'm just intensifying shadows, picking highlights, adding textures, a lot of dry brush. Continue to work on that step and that right side, scrubbing in textures, a little more saturated colors, adding some detail. Got the braces for that awning. Changing position, get the density inside that window a little darker. A little dry brush for texture. And some splatters. Again, more visual texture, glaze on the door. All right, we have pretty much blocked in and brought the saturation and some of the details up on the right side of this. I'm going to jump over to the left side of this piece and start doing the same thing, and I'm going to ultimately get a little more density overall to it through some glazing. I started doing some bluish colors over in this portion of the piece, and I'm going to do the same thing over on the left side. I still have the figure to work on, and with that much saturation, I'm going to pop in on either side on these two sides of this alley. It should really make the center portion come up and appear brighter in the distance. So let's get started. All right, come in here. I'm going to just kind of get back up to speed. This is a new setting. I haven't I didn't get it done in the first block of time, so I am now coming in and starting cold. So I need to spend a little time just warming up. Let's get some of the details in here. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I'm going to try to get a little more of a I didn't get started, or I didn't get this piece finished in one setting, so I'm coming back in. This is the next day, and I'm just going to bounce around over on this side and get my details. I'm just popping some level 3, stage 3 stuff into this side just to kind of get warmed up before I get reoriented and start in on that other side again. So it's really just trying to warm up. So get a little of that contrast going, a little more of the detail, things that I have a palette full of color. I can just grab some of this, and I'm just layering in more textures. I'm going to start over here on this side. I have a lot of pigment on my palette, so I'm just going to pick it up so it's some fairly neutral colors, dark colors, and stuff that I can really come in and start intensifying. Let's look here. So this needs to come up. Oh yeah, that's another thing I was going to do. I saw I don't have this angle quite right here. So I was going to just come in and try to fix that right there. That looks a little better. There we go. All right. A little more burnt. All right, now this whole side, actually, while that's drying, I'm going to grab this brush. I'm going to get some violet color. That is a nice color. And I'm just going to throw a glaze over on this side. Down here on the floor too. Just a nice violet glaze right in through here. So that's going to look cool. And I'm going to get a little more of it. And I'm going to throw a little more right in through here, just kind of as a swash. Right there, cool. Then I'm going to get a little more of this orangish red. Glaze a little more of that right in through here, and I'm going to glaze a little more color onto that door. This right here needs a little more orange to it, so that's looking better. Edge work there with some dark colors, starting to dry, feeling no wet spots. So that's an edge. I'm going to put a shadow line right under that. So right now everything needs to dry. It's just a hot mess and it just needs to calm down and give me a little dry paper so I can come in and hit the last bits on. I'm going to get that figure in the next pass and we'll get started in just a second. All right, this has been drying, oh gosh, about 10 minutes I think. This area was very saturated and so was this right down here. So I just needed to let it dry and I can get my hands placed around. I just couldn't find a wet, nice dry spot to set my hand down. So when I get started now, I'm going to finish up some of the texture here. I actually am going to come after this silhouette of the figure seated in the chair. And he's predominantly silhouette, but there is a little smidge and a touch of blue on the shirt. So I'll add that blue in first and then do all the rest of the really dark colors and create the silhouette of the figure and the chair. All in one, just one big complex shape. So it's pretty simple, but hopefully it'll read like a figure. So, all right, here we go. I'm gonna get some of that nice. I'm gonna get, actually, I think it's a better phthalo blue with a little ultramarine mixed in with it. And I'm going to place it right here on the shoulder. Right here, like that. Right down on that. And then we'll get the rest. Get some of this dark color, mix in some of that. And get a smaller brush. All right, here we go. I want to do it like the heads. I'm not going to let that head touch the shoulder much, if any. And we'll come in now with the darker color. Get that arm on the back of the chair. All right, cool. And ultimately, I will come back over. All right, let's get this. All right, there we go. If I can get here, get all these different shapes. There's some compound shapes in here. Get his hand. We're going to get that arm right there of the chair. It comes down. Get his leg in here. Back of the seat. And then we'll get the, we'll just pull the legs real quick. So this leg, and get the thickness just right. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to pull that leg real fast and hopefully crunchy. Ah, didn't get crunchy enough. There we go. Alright, we'll deal with some of that later. We've got some more stuff happening in here. And disguise the fact that I screwed it up. Alright, we're going to get that back right there. Pull that leg on out. We got both legs there. There we go. Got another leg of the chair coming down. All right, how's that looking? Looks a little funky, doesn't it? I'm going to pull the shadow up a little higher. And we got a leg, I think we got a leg coming across. All right, so that's pretty much a cityscape, 2 figures. It's totally overworked. Again, I'm out of practice, not painting as much as I need to be to really be tuned up, but it turned out all right. I'm thinking it'll be okay. I don't know. I'm just blabbing now. That's a cityscape with 2 figures, old world scene with lots of textures and cracks and crags and lines and all sorts of fun stuff. Hey, let me know. Give me some comments. I don't know. I'm still blabbing. I'm going to do it again. Hey, if you got any value out of this video, please give me a like and a subscribe. Drop me some comments, and I'll see you in the next video.